Hey there, I'm Jenn Herman with Jenn's Trends, and if you've wanted to create better photos on Instagram, this is the video for you. We're going to talk about things that work well on Instagram, things that maybe don't work so well on Instagram in general, and how you can use this to create better content for your brand. So first, some things to think about when it comes to creating your content on Instagram. In general, a clear focal point. We want something that is clearly the point of focus for people to pay attention to in that photo. Things that have a ton of stuff going on, busy backgrounds, lots of things, and chaos are hard to focus on and will usually get a scroll past. Instead, clear object of focus. There can be things in the background, but either they're maybe further away and blurred out, maybe they're muted, something that just doesn't distract from that clear focal point of your photos. Also, generally brighter is better. Now, we don't want to make it all like Stepford wifey in the kind of situation where everyone has these bright, airy, pastel kind of photos. That might be a little too much overkill. But in general, brighter photos with a higher brightness, with brighter colors, more pop in them will generally perform better and get more attention. It's not distracting, it's not dark, they don't have to try to strain to, again, find that clear focal point if it's a brighter image. So in general, brighter is better, and tied into that, bold, bright colors typically do better. Now, I do have a video, I will link to it below here with tips on better engagement on Instagram, and one of the tips in there is the color blue. Blue will generally get you more engagement. It's a good, powerful color. But what shade of blue? You know, I'm wearing an orange kind of bold print shirt today. Is that a good bold color to stand out? It could be. It has to depend on your content, your branding, all these other aspects. But in general, bold colors, bright colors, something that really does kind of stand out. You also do want to consider when you're picking your colors and things, think about dark mode. Dark mode is now a thing. So not everyone's looking in dark mode, not everyone's looking in white mode. So I am like the retina searing blindness. I hate dark mode. I am not one of those people, but I have some of my best friends who live and die by dark mode. And you want to keep this in mind when you're creating that brighter content, those bold colors, those sorts of things, and how it looks on both backgrounds. Because what may look really good on a white background may not stand out on a black background, or vice versa. And because your audience is going to be split, we want to create content that works in both of those backgrounds for good optimal exposure and good engagement with your audience. Another thing to keep in mind when creating content on Instagram, happy feelings. Certain colors evoke happiness. Certain images create a connotation of happiness. If you see a sad, depressed, horribly, sad looking puppy, that's not happy. People don't want to like non-happy things. So when you put things that tend to be happier, they tend to perform better. Now, this is a big issue for a lot of nonprofits, for a lot of medical industry, these sorts of things, because a lot of what you're doing is you're trying to help and overcome negative circumstances. So a lot of your content can have a very negative connotation. Well, instead of focusing on the negatives, focus on the positives. Don't share the photo of the emaciated dog. Share the photo of the happy face of a dog being adopted. Instead of showing the sad realities of a cancer treatment facility, share the stories of remission, of somebody leaving and being surrounded by family, songs, all those sorts of things that have the uplifting component versus that sad component can be very helpful in creating better content in general on Instagram. Additionally, good content has to be on brand for you. Not for me, not for anybody else. It has to be on brand for you. If your brand is bold and loud and out there, then you don't want to be using white, pastels and light, airy colors, because that's not your brand. Your brand is bold. Use deep saturation and bold colors. If your brand is vintage or antique, don't use bold colors. Use a more muted palette with a yellow undertone that tends to give a more vintage appeal. You want your content to reflect your brand in a way that when someone meets you in real life or comes to your store, what they see online is relatable to what they're going to encounter in real life. So that's kind of the ultimate key to success, is it really has to stay on brand with you and your business in terms of your content. Now, what should you not do? Because we can talk about all the great things you should do. What should you not do on Instagram? Now, I'm saying this in general because not everything is always accurate for everybody. In general, text is not great on Instagram. A couple words here and there, not so bad. I use this actually very strategically on my content. If you go to my Instagram at JENNS_trends, you'll see I put 2 or 3 words on my images very frequently. And I use this to say, hey, this is what this topic is about, or hey, here's some Instagram updates. And when I say that, people are like, oh, hold the horses, I got to turn in, I got to read what she wrote about. So it's a clear, almost call to action to tell them what that content is. That's one thing. I'm talking text overload. People are not going to read your photos. If you're creating graphics, like a PDF or an image that you're putting up as a flyer, and you did that on Facebook and it maybe did okay on Facebook, it is not going to do okay on Instagram, all right? People are not looking for that kind of content. Instead, you want a beautiful image and maybe a word or 2 on the image. And then in the caption, you're going to outline all those details about the who, what, when, where, all the details of the event, that sort of thing. General graphics do not perform well on Instagram. They're not pretty. They're not relatable. People don't want to look at that kind of content. So please stop doing it. Unless your metrics say otherwise. If your metrics show that works for you, then by all means do it. But in general, bad idea. Also, kind of the opposite of what we said in the good things to do, don't do busy photos. You can see my background is very white behind me, and there's some things in the background, but it's not overly distracting. That's okay. We don't want busyness. I don't want to be doing this maybe in the middle of like a bookstore and there's people roaming around and there's books everywhere and there's shelves everywhere and there's distractions everywhere. That's a lot of chaos. Now, let's say your business is a bookstore. How do you photograph that? Well, you get up close to one book. You get a clear focal point and show that there's more in the background, but not everything all in chaos all around that point of focus. Also, don't use stock photos. Stop it. For the love of all things on this planet, stop using stock photos. We all recognize stock photos, right? They're all horrible, they're all cheesy, and they're all the same. If you can get a really good stock photo, then okay, I guess. But in general, those really kind of iconic stock photos, stop using them. You're way better off taking your own photos that, first of all, you own the rights to. They're now going to be on brand and related to you and what you do because they're not generic. So that's an advantage there in and of itself. But we want your tone of voice. We want your business and your brand to shine through, and stock photos just aren't going to accomplish that. So take some time to go out and take some photos. I always tell my clients, you know what? When you go out to dinner, stop and take some photos of a pretty building or flowers or clouds. I take my kid to the zoo when we're not in quarantine, and I take photos of flowers and trees and things that have nothing to do with the zoo, but that I can repurpose in other content if I need it. So when you're out, just start snapping photos of things. If you never use them, so be it, but at least you have them if you need them. I then take all those photos, I usually drop them into a Dropbox folder, and I put them into categories. So if you have a lot of seasonal content, you could have things for like, winter, spring, summer, fall. You could have on peak, off peak, all these different types of things that as you take photos, you just dump them in there, and you could use a photo that's 3-4 years old if you need to, but it's your photo, you own the copyright to it, and it's true to your brand. It's not a stock photo. So those are my top tips for how to create better content. I know there's no clear specific examples in this video. This is a very general context, but I hope this gives you some direction and some thought in terms of what makes a good photo on Instagram. Finally, you are going to want to look at your insights. Go look at your insights on Instagram. Look at your content tab and look at what content performs best for you in terms of engagement, in terms of clicks, all those sorts of things, because that is what's going to tell you that your audience wants more of those things, so you can create more of that content and actually take care of your clients on Instagram. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and subscribe to this channel where I constantly post more videos with tips and tricks just like this to succeed on Instagram and social media in general. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.